for a bit.
Yeah, we're going to Kauai.
Oh, okay. I have to tell you all the things you have to do there.
Okay. Yeah, let's have a chat after the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got 10 participants.
Well, to respect everybody's time, why don't we start and then others can join us along the way? I'm Gail Barron, and I co-chair the Women and Families Committee of Community Board 8 with Peggy Price. Welcome to the committee's first meeting of 2025. We're very grateful to all of you who have joined us as we brainstorm topics for potential committee meetings and forums down the road. And before I turn the program over to Peggy, who will give us a more detailed outlook, I wanted just to point out that the mission of the committee is to address the financial and the social issues which impact not only women, but men and families on the Upper East Side. With that said, maybe Kevin, you can go through the housekeeping and then Peggy can pick up.
Yeah, welcome everyone. If this is your first time joining us virtually, you will notice that you're currently muted, and everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting except for Gail and Peggy. And Gail and Peggy will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the react icon on your device and pressing the raise hand button. If you're calling in on the phone, it is *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is available for technical support only. And then please do not raise your actual hand or wave the screen because we may not be able to see you. Just chat me. I'm here for support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Peggy?
very much. Okay, well, so thank you for joining us. And we, given the changed political landscape, we felt that we needed to target our committee programs to address the new or the heightened issues. And so I think we have three meetings after that this year, after this one. Let me just tick off some of the topics that to be considered, and then we'll sort of open the floor to um, everyone's ideas. So, so we're hearing so much about DEI is out the window, and that Washington is um, urging corporate America to follow suit and has threatened to investigate companies that continue to pursue their DEI policies. So that is a very timely topic. Um, Under the rubric of abortion, uh, there is something that we should very well sort of think about considering, which is there was a story last week in the New York Times about this program in the state of Washington. It's a pilot program now, but it would allow pharmacists to prescribe abortion pills, not just doctors. And the feeling is that this is going to actually be a popular issue with the many states that still allow abortion. Um, it's something that I think at some point tonight we should talk about as to whether we want to urge New York State to do this, and especially given that there is a lawsuit that y'all probably know, filed by the Texas Attorney General, which is suing a New York doctor for prescribing abortion pills in Texas. So we don't know how that's going to play out. It certainly is a topic within the rubric of abortion, but there's several within this framework of abortion. There's several very current topics that we could be addressing. Um, There's other things, of course, that we find are popular topics with our neighborhood. That being everything from the cost of elder care to child care costs and what to do about these two big issues. Um, and there's still widespread concern in our community about crime. Um, there's there's also going to be apparently on a federal level that would affect us issues including cutting funding to public schools, restricting access to health care and abortion. Um, there's scaling back on affordable housing, which hopefully our housing, our committees, our community board's housing committee will take up. Um, the issue of hate speech um, and spreading misinformation, appointing anti-women judges and anti-civil rights judges to the courts, including the Supreme Court. So there's a host of things that we should tackle. Um, I should note that our most popular program last year was the topic of funding elder care costs, and that is a an unfortunately ongoing problem that we should continue to address because it's not going away anytime soon. Um, so within those topics, maybe or I first let me ask, does anyone want to add to this list of issues that we should consider? Okay. Well, um, oh, Robin, yes, please.
Hi, Peggy and Gail.
Hi,
To me,
Robin.
Hi
hi.
there.
Um, Better than a hand wave, right? To me,
Yeah,
um, to me, the pertinent, most on point issue for women and families in CB8 is affordability. And drilling down a little bit into that would be rent and childcare.
right. Okay. Um, yeah, thank you. And in particular, um, so would you like to expand a little bit about if we took up both of those topics, what approach would you favor?
Well, we talk at CB8, we talk all the time about increasing housing, city of yes housing, affordability housing, uh, getting developers to get on the bandwagon and putting more affordable housing into new development. You know, it's kind of been a much discussed topic, but
Mhm.
I think it's the most pertinent issue for CPA, no matter how long it's been going on. There's little resolution, and it's very difficult for families to afford nice, uh, or not even nice, just acceptable housing. And there's a real lack of affordable childcare.
Right. Yeah. And of those two issues you mentioned, because we want to prioritize urgency or interest levels, which of those two do you think, if you were to prioritize having addressing them, what would you put first?
Maybe childcare.
Right. Yeah. Um, and in fact, it's interesting. I think it was mentioned at our last full board meeting that the city plans but it is for low income people, but a child care for, excuse me, 0 to 2 aged children,
Right.
which has not been available. They call it filling in the gap. In fact, though, um, we've often said in this particular committee that not just the poor can't afford childcare. People move out of town because they can't afford town, and they're not necessarily the poorest of the poor. They're just middle class people. Many of much of our community would be, I don't know, middle class. And would you be comfortable with the fact that we would approach it from middle class point of view, or what would be your sense?
Oh my goodness. I think parents want very safe and very reliable childcare for their kids. I was a working mother my whole life, and the ability to go out to work and know you have your kids well taken care of, then you can concentrate on your job and you're not worried about all this other stuff. Uh,
Right,
you know, you could just go to work with a clear head, and I think that's what the typical parent would want now. I would be interested in hearing something from the city about what they're doing about what you just mentioned about the zero baby to toddler, I guess you'd call it. I would be interested in hearing what how the city is ramping that type of activity up. And it's not just New York, it's not just CBA, it's a nationwide problem. Working moms need reliable, uh, reliable care for their kids.
We
right,
had a meeting about 3 years ago, and Scott Stringer had, at that point, when he was the controller, they did a really solid study showing just what the issues were, the cost, et cetera. And it would be interesting to look at that in an updated sort of way, even though there may not be another study, weave in the new initiatives and get some experts on childcare and certainly hold the city accountable. What do they plan to do? I think that could be a really good initial topic for us to take up, and also to try to figure out with the new federal administration what's happening with child tax credits. I mean, there's so many things that are
Right.
still up in the air that we could definitely explore. I think it's a very timely time
Yeah,
to update it.
that's a good point, Gail.
right before I call on Rita, hi Rita. I just want to, we have a number of people from the public on this call, and we're grateful to hear from you. We'd really like to hear from you what you want. And so if you would like to say something, ask a question, please just go to the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and click the raised hand function. And please do, we really want to hear from you. Thank you. Anyway,
Definitely.
Rita,
Hi, good to see you.
you too.
You, I have been on the board for 18 years, and for 18 years, I have been fighting for affordable housing. Um, can't say that I have anything that I could hold up and say, you did it. However, the Stanley Isaacs homes housing in our community board, because it is a New York City run development, these people are still cold in the winter because they don't have heat, they don't have hot water. And it seems to me that that is unconscionable. And what I have, bringing up Scott Stringer, we did a lot of work around this with Scott Stringer, and of course, then he was no longer in that position. One of the articles that I do have, and it would take a tremendous amount of digging in a computer, was when there was so much shame and they decided to fix the boilers and a reporter from the New York Times went with a man and watched him and then asked him what he was looking for. And the man said, this is a direct quote, "How should I know? I know nothing about boilers." That is how the city handles things and why it doesn't run. So I am trying to convince, legally convince, to have a rent strike where everybody pays their rent into an escrow account and we hire people, experts, who put in boilers, who fix hot water, who do all the things, and then what's left over goes back to the city. Because in the 18 years that I have been on this board, every single year, without a doubt, we read and are aware that funds for boilers and hot water and things like that and lead tests and everything were not done, but they were paid for. So some people walked away with great deals of money because it's almost a license to steal. So would you think that I'm an very elderly lady, and to get people to believe in and me, would this committee be willing to sit with the people at Isaacson Homes and help them get started? I know of lawyers
Started what? Started doing
who
what?
would do this. So that's all. If we want to save housing, and there are plenty of empty houses there, and we have people who are single people living in 4-bedroom apartments because they will pay the same amount of money if they move to a 1-bedroom apartment as they are paying in the 4-bedroom apartment. It makes no sense. There is a lot of affordable housing that could be really used. So that's my passion for today.
Just before we call on Kiwi, can I just understand a little more? So there's a lot of housing that could be used. You mean
Yeah, it could be properly used.
they're empty? I'm sorry,
I am
empty.
aware. I am aware. I don't know. I've been told that there are a lot of empty house apartments in the Stanley Isaacs homes. Elderly people have passed on. Um,
Okay. If we had a meeting about this, it would be to try to get the city or public to.
I think that the meeting first is with the Stanley Isaacs homes people and find out from them what they are willing to do. They're scared. They're afraid of losing their apartment. And whether we bring in a lawyer that will talk to them and tell them that they can't lose their apartment if a rent strike is called, that's legal. An illegal one is not legal, obviously.
Well, Rita, the other question I would have is initially I would agree that you'd have to go to Stanley Isaacs, but we would need to have, a legitimate list of all of the issues they do have a tenant association and a hierarchy there so that we knew exactly what was happening. And the sense of a rent strike is one thing, but it's also a matter of, as ineffective as we know NYCHA can sometimes be, or unfortunately often be, going back to NYCHA where, okay, these are the issues and they've been outstanding since 2000, 2010, whatever the case might be, because I think that that gives more gravitas than, and I don't know, have they reported this other than being fearful of losing their homes? I can appreciate that. I mean,
I
how
have,
much is the city aware of what's not being done to rectify the situation? I think we have to be very careful the way we would address it.
we have the perfect person on the board. Her name is Andrea Coleman. She is the president of the Tenants Association at either Stanley Isaacs or Holmes. It's a combination. So I think that we need to have a meeting with her to get that list that you just said and to find out what they have done
Good.
and what has not been done. But I'm not saying that this is the project. I'm just saying it may be a project for community, for women and families, because it entails women and families.
Mhm.
And we may be able to make a difference.
I think it's certainly worth exploring. I think we can also weave in the housing committee because housing and zoning also has to address availability of housing, cost of housing. That's part of their mandate as well as ours. So there's no reason that we couldn't even work together with them. But I agree with you. Why don't we start with just a meeting with Sandrea so that we can get the lay of the land and then we can figure out
I
what
think
the
that's
best next
perfect.
steps are.
I think that's perfect.
And one last thing before we move on. So you're in the throes of doing a rent organizing a rent strike now, or that would be the last resort, or what?
You know, I I always like to go the legal way to begin with, but for 18 years, these people haven't had hot water and boilers that give heat. And we all know how terrible this winter has been. I think that we ask the people who have lived there what the problem has been. We know what the problem is, that the city hires people to do the job, but not necessarily they have any expertise in what they're doing. And that came out with Scott Stringer.
Mhm.
So we I don't know whether we involve Scott Stringer or not. Beyond my station, but we've heard the same story for 18 years. And, the story hasn't changed. And we have read all the newspaper articles of where people have been hired and then don't do the job and nobody checks on them and therefore the job isn't done and the money is gone. It has been gone for years and years.
Well,
And
let me just, I'm sorry, but you're in the throes of organizing a rent strike now, or that would just be a last
well,
resort?
I think that first you have to
Do our
go,
homework.
yeah, I think you have to go, one step at a time. If we either get answers now from the authority that they're willing to do something, and if we don't see any movement in that, that's when I suggest that we hire that a lawyer gets hired, not we, a lawyer gets hired, and a rent strike, and people have to take it upon themselves to hire people to fix the things. It's in our community. There is no reason that anybody has to live like that.
Rita, I'm curious, during that 18-year period, did any of our committees ever reach out to the city?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, I'm just curious because then we could go back to some type of a formal record that said there was a resolution in 2001 or whatever, but
Not
okay.
to my knowledge.
Thank you. So Kiwi Callahan, please.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Kiwi.
Hi. Hi. It's nice to meet you all. I have lived in New York for 15 years, but I only moved to the Upper East Side in the fall of 2023. So I'm still getting to know all of you wonderful committees. And I'm so glad that Rita brought up all those issues because actually I was going to say some of the same things. These issues all tend to be so intertwined, right? And with regards to the heat, that sort of dovetails with one thing that I wanted to say was there's that heat pump program that just got rolled out, and I would want to just make sure that our community is taking as much advantage of that as possible. And hopefully that could maybe start to alleviate some of those situations that Rita was referring to. But obviously, those kinds of things take time and you have to get the information to people. So I would love to make sure that we're getting all that information, where it's supposed to go, who qualifies, like how can people apply, like what kind of outreach are we doing? I think that would be super important. Um, and I love that we were talking about childcare. That's wonderful. And something else that often dovetails with both those two things is food security. And I would love to make sure that we are keeping an eye on, all the different ways that we can make sure that we luckily don't live in as much of a food desert as I think some other neighborhoods suffer from. But also at the same time, the cost of this neighborhood can be pretty prohibitive, especially when it comes to things like fresh produce and things like that. So how are we making sure that everybody in our community has access to healthy foods, not just food, but like foods that will nourish them, right? And I don't know, this is me being a dreamer, but can we grow any of it in this neighborhood? Like, what are we doing with community gardens? All of those things. Um, and then also there's a really wonderful organization called the Trust for Public Land, and they do these really fantastic playground conversions that basically take the urban blacktop, no shade, no plant life, anything playgrounds that we're all used to, and they convert them into these really beautiful areas that are just really delightful to be in, but then also act as bioswales sometimes. They have all these other functionalities too, besides just being great playgrounds. They tend to be made from repurposed materials. And I think one of the things that I love the best about their work is that they really work with each school and each community individually to make sure that the playground is meeting the needs of that specific community and is serving them in the best way possible. And I know there's a couple playgrounds in our neighborhood that have not had that. I think there's a couple that have had the treatment, but a couple that have not. And I would love to try to prioritize making sure that we can get these folks or someone similar, but they're the ones that I know the most into those schools that haven't received that benefit yet, because I think, that's something that can really benefit everyone. These parks are, of course, for children, but they really become public spaces. If they're nice to be in, they can be anchors for the nearby community. So I think that would be something that I would love to see as well. I think that's the
Which
end of my list.
so which schools have not been prioritized?
Oh, I'm not 100% sure. I don't have kids. So I walk by them and I go, that's a lot of blacktop and no trees. And I'm not 100% sure where they are.
Okay. And
Um,
I'm sorry, and you mentioned the heat pump program.
yes. So it
Sorry,
is. New York State Clean Heat Initiative. And I believe there are like rebates and stuff that homeowners can get in order to use um, heat pumps. There are also financing options and tax credits, but then they were also I don't have the details in front of me, but if I remember correctly, there was at least a pilot program, if it hasn't been rolled into a full program yet, where folks in public housing could get a heat pump, just one that would live in their window, similar to an air conditioning unit for free. And if you're not familiar with heat pumps, the amazing thing about heat pumps is that they're so much more efficient than an air conditioner, but so they're efficient, but they do heat as well as cool. So they can do both from the same unit at a much lower cost. And with the summers getting so hot, having affordable air conditioning, because of course it's cold in the winter, like Rita was just saying, but in the summer it's just as bad. You know, you still need climate control, especially if you live on a high floor. It can get unbearable in the summer. I'm not 100% sure of the details, but it's the New York State Clean Heat Pump Program, and I think the public housing thing is a separate city initiative, but we should check into that as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Robin?
So, Robin,
Sorry.
Robin Zelix. Oh,
Hi, me again. Rita, getting back to Stanley Isaac's houses, you kind of preempted what I thought because Sandrea is addressing this and she spoke about it at the beginning of our meeting. When was it, last week or 2 weeks ago? So when I think about women and children in this weather that we've been having with no heat, I am so sad and so distressed about it. And she's Rita, it sounds like she's very much on top of this. But in my mind, the best thing for her to do and the rest of the tenants, and I'm sure she's done this because she's pretty savvy, is let Julie Menon insert herself into the start of the process, to talk to the city, to negotiate with NYCHA. And I would bet dollars to donuts that she's in touch with Julie Menon. But
thank you.
yeah, it's just so sad and so distressing to think that this is going on in 10-degree weather. So whatever we can do to help, yes, by all means.
Terrific. And in terms of this, I just want to see what people think about this issue that I mentioned earlier, that with the abortion issue, within the rubric of the abortion issue, the pilot program in Washington State that allows pharmacists to provide abortion pills and not just doctors. I'm thinking it would be really good if you all thought it was a good idea, if we could take up that cause and encourage it to happen in New York State. And what do you think? Well, let me ask Susan Evans.
Kevin, can you unmute Susan? Thank you.
I think it's a great idea. And I think that the only caveat I would be a little afraid of is that if the pharmacists have to keep lists of who actually asks for these pills, and if there could be a bad resolution for those women who do need the pill to have to be put on record. That would be my only caveat. I think it is a very good idea. And I think we should try to be on board. Could I just ask Rita one question?
Yeah.
Rita, are you there?
Yeah,
Well,
just ask your question and then we'll.
okay.
Okay.
I just was a bit confused because you mentioned that there were a lot of apartments or many apartments in Stanley Isaacs that were empty. Now, all I ever have heard throughout my whole life on the Upper East Side or anywhere in the city is people are on these lists to get into a public housing unit. So how is Stanley Isaacs allowed to continue if they're doing this, um, sort of, you know, putting apartments on, just emptying apartments and then not getting new tenants? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me in that they're not getting rent at all. And buildings that do that are sometimes get into more gang activities where kids go into these empty apartments and use them for nefarious things. But anyway, that's my question to Rita. Are there all these empty apartments in Stanley Isaacs? And if so, does she know why?
Could Rita be unmuted, please?
Rita, you're already unmuted.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Did you hear my question, Rita?
I did. I did. The people of Stanley Isaacs don't have any control over it. It's the city that has control over rentals and empty apartments and things like that. But for years, we have heard that there, from tenants who live there, not that we heard it on the street, uh, that there are empty apartments. But I wish the city would run better, but it doesn't. And it would be something to look into, that maybe we could find housing at Stanley Isaac's homes for some people who are on a list. But it doesn't seem to be moving. And there's something wrong with that. And and I understand, and I have talked to people, they're just scared. They're just frightened. They're so scared that they're going to lose their apartment if they make any noise. If they start anything, that they'll lose it. And that's why I I don't want to keep hearing this forever. And that if we got it legally done and had um, proper people fixing up everything and counting all the empty apartments and filling them with people who need it, we will have done something in our community, something that nobody else, developers are not going to build affordable housing. There is no money in affordable housing for them. They don't want affordable housing in their neighborhood. So, but we have 5 affordable housing buildings that are crumbling. And how do we stop them from crumbling and allow the people inside to live properly?
The other thing is, per Robin's suggestion, this is another question to really ask Andrea, who is not shy, and I'm sure would be very comfortable answering the question. I can't imagine, knowing Sandrea, that they haven't done some studies, even, reaching out to tenants in your apartment. What is the problem? Now, it also sometimes will happen that you need a new refrigerator or a stove or whatever. And if NYCHA doesn't replace certain equipment, then they can't rent the apartment. So they're kind of this whirly thing that you don't always have answers to.
I don't know. To be honest, I really don't know. And even though Sandrea is very articulate and very smart and everything else, it is not, if it was up to her, she would do what we were saying, but she needs to have the consensus of everybody who lives there. A rent strike isn't that some people don't pay their rent into escrow and some people pay their rent directly. Everybody participates, or else it doesn't work. And they're scared. They're frightened. They'd rather
Has,
live in a
I'm
cold
sorry,
apartment than in a cold outdoors.
has Andrea called for a rent strike?
I I haven't posed it to her yet.
Okay, okay.
I
I,
will.
have you discussed a rent strike with anybody else?
Yes, I many years ago, Concourse Village in the Bronx had a rent strike, and it was extremely effective.
Okay.
They got what they wanted. They got fixed what needed to be fixed, and they got it done in a timely fashion. Not we'll put in one refrigerator here and a stove over there. Uh,
I, I just wonder also whether this is an issue that in the mayoral race, whether any of the, Rita, have you heard whether any of the candidates are discussing this?
everybody, everybody, what's the first thing out of their mouth? Affordable housing.
Are they talking about public
Talking,
housing or are they just talking about,
just
um,
talking. It's just let me bring you back a little bit. Remember under de Blasio, where he was going to a developer to put another large tower right in Stanley Isaac's playground.
The infill. Mhm.
Remember? His name was
yeah,
and what was Mr. Fentner going to do for the people of Stanley Isaac's homes? The first thing, and Ed Hartzog called it, is going to replace the windows. We have it on tape. And we fought hard, and and that's where the people came down. I remember a woman coming down who had two young boys, and she had not had hot water for so long that she took them in the dead of winter up to a sports club and begged them if she could use their bathroom so she could wash her boys around. This is America. This is New York. It,
okay. We'll definitely,
I'm putting my soapbox away.
no, no, no. Thank you very much for all this information. Um, I guess the way we'll proceed is we'll talk to Sandrea and see how she would like us to help her. Would that sound reasonable to everybody?
Okay.
Um, and another issue that I wanted to ask, so we've been hearing endlessly about DEI and the government is intent on getting rid of it and pushing corporate America to get rid of it. It's the sort of anti-discrimination uh, provision. And I wonder, given that the government has decided to try to force companies to abandon their DEI practices, whether we should do anything, say anything. This would heavily impact women as well as minorities. Um, does anybody have any thought about whether we should proceed to address this issue? Try to ask the state, the city, whatever, to in some way provide protection for companies who still want to have DEI practices. There are a number of outspoken there's a lot of companies that are getting rid of their DEI practices, and there are some that, such as Apple and a few others that are saying they're not going to get rid of them. I think JP Morgan has said that it does not want to get rid of its DEI programs. What do we think we should do about that? What would people want to do, if anything, about protecting DEI?
Well, one thing that I would point out is that we should also find out how New York City is responding. In the federal government, we know that an edict has gone out that all senior managers with DEI positions are being put on paid leave. So how is the city of New York responding? What about the state? Because I'm sure that they do already have responses ready, even if we haven't heard them yet. I think that's important. I think we can reach out to people like Kathy Weil at the Partnership for New York City. I'm happy to call Kathy just to find out what their discussions are, because they have the 250 largest corporations in the city as their membership. So I think
Yeah,
that what we should do, once again, is just more homework to kind of get a sense of where we stand as a community, where the city is, and where corporations seem to be leaning that are New York City based.
right. No, that sounds like a good idea. Should we, are there any other ideas before we decide what needs to be prioritized? Anybody have any other suggestions? Um, okay. So, what would we like to prioritize? I think we will go ahead, apart from a meeting situation, to talk to Sandrea, and see if we could also get um, the Housing, Zoning, and Development Committee to give us a hand. That would be more their bailiwick anyway, but we'd all like to help with that. But we'll do that. That's okay with folks. We'll do that as soon as possible, but not within a framework of a meeting just yet, till we get some information. The issues that we could, really also push for, I do think this idea, especially given the climate in the federal government, of uh, trying to the pharmacists, um, the trying to encourage the state to allow pharmacists to prescribe abortion pills. This would be very helpful, I would think, for especially middle or lower income women, um, uh, and out of state women as well. I think they would have wide application. So I think we should, if it's okay, let's put that on the list. um, and we have expressed a lot of interest in childcare, which that will be an ongoing issue, but we should try to find out what the city plans to do, but also, since the administration may change, what are the candidates thinking about? Anyway, who's ever pushing some programs that to make childcare more affordable is, um, and just before I call on Robin, let me say that it seems like we should address this DEI issue. I mean, it's fundamental to women to not be discriminated against, and I think women and minorities are under basic attack now from Washington. Whatever we can do locally, and we've got major corporations here, as well as small employers who are going to be affected by this. I think we should put it on the list. It's just such a wide, important issue. I hope you all agree, but please tell me if you you don't. Um, anyway, Robin.
I was just going to say very, very briefly, Peggy. Uh, as you know, there are 7 or 8 people running for mayor, and I think every single one of them has put out a platform or a position paper or a statement on childcare.
Okay.
It's top of mind for them as well, and you could probably look at their website and see what they're all, what their proposals are. Um, I don't
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know that having these candidates come speak with us would be appropriate.
No, no, no. I agree with you. It seems to me we should tell them what we need,
Yeah,
um, as opposed to them just announcing what they want to do. No, no, no. They should want to know what we want.
right.
We're anyway, that's my
Our input.
soapbox. Yeah. Okay. Well, childcare is definitely on the list. So, Gail, what are you thinking?
I would think that childcare would be appropriately perhaps the first forum that we have. It's a follow-up to what we've looked at before. We'll be able to have a read on what the current prices are, the availability, because remember during the pandemic, a lot of the childcare facilities closed rather than expanded. So that really narrowed the availability, and those childcare facilities that were left became even more expensive. So I'd really like to see what could be available. And then if we see that there's a candidate or two that has a platform that makes sense, we can certainly not endorse it because we're apolitical, but we can certainly pick up components and spread the word that this is something that would work well, and simultaneously do our research as to where Washington is going to stand, where the administration is going to stand, and then in turn find out with our city and state leaders, how are they planning to address this issue, particularly if the tax credits are cut and if even less is available to families rather than more, because we really have not taken a look at that for around 3 years. And I think the timing is right, given all of the expenses of living in the city.
And
Okay.
Gail, just one further point.
Mhm.
The problem with childcare is that the workers are so poorly compensated, and it's very hard to get good people to work in these childcare facilities because they don't get a livable wage. So, I think that we need to think about that. How to how to get good people paid well to come and take care of these children.
Well, that ties into DEI, as you can imagine. If the DEI is the child facilities are typically staffed by people. They they could be immigrants. A lot of them are immigrants, and if these people are deported, you're really running into a worsening problem.
Yep.
Um, so, I mean, that is certainly a component of it. Um, One thing that I would ask, that there does seem to be a somewhat timely issue around this pilot program in Washington and getting more states to jump aboard on it, um, for allowing pharmacists uh, to prescribe and dispense abortion pills. Um, and in fact, there's that, as we were saying before, the tied in is this lawsuit in New York State, targeting a doctor here. Um, Seems like, what would people mind if we kind of took that up first, though, and addressed these pressing issues and then take up childcare? Or, I mean, I guess there is some, I think we should get out in front of these issues, especially encouraging the governor to and elected officials to adopt this provision. Um, what do you think? Rita?
I have a question. Do we know how many anti-abortion pills are dispensed every year nationally, and how many are dispensed and delivered by mail, period? Um, I'd be curious to know that number. Uh, I'm still personally smarting from the Democratic platform uh, that revolved around a woman's rights and abortion. And we heard that the state really doesn't care about it. So,
Doesn't care about.
about, a women's problems are not something that everybody embraces. But I would just out of curiosity as to how many people are we going to be able to aid with better abortion um, dispensing?
Well, if we got some speakers, we could get, that's an excellent question. If we get some speakers, we could get answers to the questions we need. The one reason that, and I'm sorry for being a pain, but I have been pressing on this pharmacy issue, is that our legislature is in session now. And if we can, bring it up to them sooner before the end of their session, we might be able to get somewhere sooner, because our next meeting is in April, and then after that it's July, and that's too late. Um, so,
Great.
Well, also, there's the question with the abortion pill as to whether or not, for example, a doctor or a pharmacist in New York could then send the pill to a state that doesn't have the same abortion rights, because there's the whole question of interstate commerce and whether or not the pills could be shipped through the mail. And it's
right.
possible, at least there have been discussions, that the current administration might decide that this is not in keeping with the law. And from an interstate commerce vantage point, the pills can't be mailed. So if New York even were to allow pharmacists to prescribe the pills and once again come out as a leader with states that do allow abortion, doing that and trying to see if that can set the stage for some that are not anti-abortion but don't have the same sense of the importance of having this medicine available. That's another point that we might want to address.
Excellent point, and I agree. As far as I'm concerned, the
Restrictions
sooner the
may
better.
be,
Yeah,
far greater than what they are right now,
yeah.
which would almost argue for the point that anything we can do which would create availability, is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and you bring up the Comstock Act, which is what you just mentioned, which uh, chances are that the current administration is going to try to take the axe to the rights to sell interstate. So, um, so the sooner New York State responds, the better. But especially given that our legislature is only in session till June, whatever we want to bring up to them, we'll have to bring it up this this next 6 months, next 5 months. Um, okay, how would it be if we start with the abortion related topic, then do childcare, and meanwhile work on the housing issue with Andrea and the housing committee? Does that sound like a fairly good, agenda? Um, and if we did one more issue in the fall, is there a preference among the group about where it would be? I would just mention elder care, given that like childcare, it's really thorny issue. And as I mentioned in the beginning, that was the one that drew our biggest audience last year. So there's a need, and with Medicare about to be cut, that could make things even worse. But would that be a good topic to revisit, or would there be something that we would prefer? What do you think, Gail?
Well, I think that the cost of elder care keeps escalating. So many people don't have long-term care insurance because it's so expensive. And then the problem is the burden falls upon the family to have to provide as many resources as possible. So in essence, folks that are in the middle of their working career are using retirement funds to care for aging parents. And there's been so much discussion as what other types of pilot programs might be in place. There's one in Michigan, there's one in Hawaii. I think it would be very interesting just to find out what these other programs are and if there's anything applicable, and whether the state at this point has any new or innovative thoughts. So
Yeah,
I'm in favor of taking a look. Once again, it's another cost that keeps people from really being able to have a certain quality of life. And I know Kiwi mentioned the food insecurity, and I know it's even greater than during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, what we did was a white paper listing all of the sources of fresh and nutritious food for the community. And I think that rather than having a meeting on it, that we should just update the white paper, and maybe some committee members might like to work on that with us, because I think it's really important as you recognize working on the overview of the budget, to think that 4 out of 10 New York City school kids go to school and they have to have breakfast there or they wouldn't eat. I mean, that is just something that's abhorrent. I can't even imagine what that's like. So, being ensuring that people do have nutritious food, and sometimes people are embarrassed, but also they just don't always know where to go because there are churches that may have had food pantries and don't right now, or synagogues. And also, if we just update that list so that people know what they can, where they can go, so that they can secure adequate groceries. I think that that's something that I'd like to see us address. And we could do that through research. We don't have to have people come in as speakers, I don't think.
that is an excellent idea. Um, Good. Well, I'm wondering if there's anybody has any further comments or uh, would like to adjourn.
Or if you
Um,
have other ideas that you think of after the meeting, whether member
oh,
of the public, oh, okay.
Sapraz.
Yes, hi everyone.
Hi.
I first time visiting. I know that I'm not the stereotypical member here as a 25-year-old South Asian man, but I just wanted to echo my support for virtually all the topics being discussed tonight. And I wanted to in particular highlight the points that Rita was mentioning. I want to say that, you know, to put it shortly, you know, she's definitely speaking my language, and I'm definitely in support of sort of the issues that she raised. And you know, I'm definitely sympathetic to um, you know, causes that affect people, especially folks that may not be able to you know, advocate for themselves for these sorts of issues, especially affordable housing and the like. So just kind of wanted to raise my hand and say if there was anything that I could do to help with sort of that process. I live. Oh, I didn't even introduce myself. I live in Turtle Bay. I've been here for 3.5 years now. Part of my resolution with this new administration was to try to get more involved locally. So this is sort of my being proactive. But yeah, just wanted to reiterate that Rita, what she was speaking to, is something that's definitely resonates with me. I used to work somewhat closely with city government. So I have some former coworkers who have been like New York City lawyers who have sort of dealt with issues like I'm sure what Rita was speaking to about maybe going on rent strikes or going down that path. And I know that for these sorts of more thorny issues, it can just be helpful to have boots on the ground, somebody that is being proactive and knocking on doors and talking to people. If it even means going to visit the housing facilities at Stanley Isaacson, that'd be something that I'd be, you know, happy to look into doing or spending some time and energy doing. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of volunteer myself, and I don't know the best way to share contact information or follow up with the group on these sorts of topics, but just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Do we have your contact information? I assume that it was that you filled out everything digitally. So this way we can get back to you and kind of keep you in the loop. So we'll do that. But thank you
Terrific.
very much for your input and your interest in helping. We appreciate it. That'd be great.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Really very helpful input and lots of different perspectives. So thanks for taking the time to share the ideas with us. And so for now, keep warm. um, and we will see you soon.
Thank you again. We really appreciate all your input. Take
Thank
care.
you.